time, I was jumping up and down, mad as a hornet, because my cameras were 3/4 mile away across the field. So I lost a great picture.
Bill, Colonel Gunn also carries a message from the new government.
Yes, he did. The message was, please have the American and the British occupy Romania. Please don't let the Russians occupy Romania. The message went to Eisenhower. Eisenhower sent it to Churchill and Roosevelt, and they said no. And the Romanian people, with that little word no, had to suffer 45 more years of a cruel dictatorship to satisfy the greed and the lust for power of Joe Stalin. They acquiesced to give Stalin what he wanted.
In Washington, OSS Chief Bill Donovan was thrilled. King Michael's coup had given him a chance to send in his spies.
Well, said Donovan, I see my opportunity here. I can send in a delegation that can take the POWs back home, but at the same time, they can keep their eyes open. As far as he was concerned, there's only one man for the job, and that was Frank Wisner.
He had a particular mission, and that was to collect intelligence on the German dispositions in Romania so that we could bomb the German lines of retreat. It was extremely successful.
The tricky part now came. Let's find out, what do the Russians want to do?
The NKVD, the Soviet secret police, began to move in and take control, and began infiltrating and manipulating Romanian politics and adding political pressure to the Romanian government to take orders from Moscow.
The most serious problem that Wisner began to report on was the Russians didn't intend to liberate Romania. They intended to take it. No matter what Joe Stalin said, in reality, there was a plan, and they could see it unfold.
He began to see that. He witnessed it, testified to it, communicated his views to Washington. He was deeply concerned about the threat of the Soviet Union.
What happened in Romania was a preview of what was going to happen in the rest of Eastern Europe.
That was a bad shock for us.
1944, 4 months after being shot down, Destiny Deb's crew was finally going home.
They rescued 1,160 prisoners of war, 400 miles behind the German lines without a single casualty.
The rescue operation was a well-publicized success and caught on film. This is 20-year-old Bill Feely, just moments before his flight to freedom.
It took 3 or 4 days to carry all the POWs back to Italy. But it was a trip we'll all remember.
Bill Feely was the last time he saw King Michael. When War Stories returns, the dramatic reunion of an American airman and the last Romanian monarch. September 1944, with 500,000 Soviet troops in Romania, Stalin's plan to Sovietize Europe was underway. In Washington, OSS agent Frank Wisner's reports created serious alarm.
Is he saying that this great dream we have of post-war cooperation with the Soviet Union is a dream, it's a fantasy? Is he saying that Stalin is lying to us, that there's going to be an Iron Curtain? Is that what he's saying? Yes, that's exactly what he was saying.
The decision is made by Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin, essentially.
Yes.
To leave Romania behind the Iron Curtain. You were never consulted.
No, never. I never even heard about it until much later.
The communist march to power was slow, but certain.
It was a losing battle all the beginning.
Take over the ministries, they take over the business of government.
They're aiming to do that. The leaders of the Romanian Communist Party go to Moscow. They want to know from Stalin when to make the move to seize power. And he says, in essence, go do it. And they put enormous pressure on King Michael, who has the constitutional power to appoint the prime minister. And so at last he appoints Groza, March 6, 1945.
Petro Groza's regime began 43 years of brutal communist tyranny.
What happens to the key players? Let's start with Antonescu.
Antonescu is brought to trial in 1946 in Bucharest. He was tried as a war criminal.
On 1 June 1946, Ian Antonescu was executed by firing squad at the hands of the communists. During these sad and trying times, Michael found love when he met Princess Anne of Bourbon-Parma. For her service as a battlefield ambulance driver during the war, the French awarded her the prestigious Croix de Guerre for heroism. The couple decided to get married within a year, but just before their wedding, the unimaginable happened. On 30 December 1947, the Communist Party chairman demanded that Michael abdicate.
He said, if you don't do this quick enough, we are going to be obliged to shoot 1,000 young students that we had arrested in Bucharest. As I said, I can't take the responsibility for having people murdered just for me to stay on here, so now to sign it.
And right afterwards, the Romanian People's Republic is proclaimed a communist state.
The young monarch left in silence, eventually settling in Switzerland, where he'd spend most of his 45-year exile. During his absence, Romania suffered terribly. The scars of Eastern Europe's tortured past are still evident here in Bucharest. The bullet holes in this building behind me are from the 1989 revolution that overthrew the last communist dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu. In 1992, 3 years after the revolution, Michael was finally allowed to return to his country.
I was allowed in for 3 days. And that was quite something because there were such crowds that came out.
Michael and Anne had 5 daughters and continue to live a simple life in Switzerland. Along with his eldest daughter, he founded and supports the Princess Margarita of Romania Foundation, which promotes the spiritual and social renewal of the country. Michael's distant relative, Charles, Prince of Wales, once referred to him as a beacon of hope. For one American, he was a savior.
Your Majesty, this is Bill Feely.
Your Majesty, my pleasure to see you once again. The last time I saw you was 62 years ago in the prison camp at your garrison. Thank you for being so kind to us there under those conditions.
No, it's very rare to see someone again like that.
Right, and it's been a long time.
Bill, you had mentioned to me that you believed, and a lot of the other airmen believed, that had it not been for King Michael, you might well have been sent to Germany.
That's right. We understood that at the time that, and some of the people told us that you had told the Germans that if any people got shot down over Romania, they will be your prisoners.
That's true.
And you prevented us from going to Germany, and we thank you that. And everybody remembers that, and they thank you from the bottom of their heart. They were memorable days, and we thank you and your lovely people here in Romania.
There's more war stories from Eastern Europe just ahead. Don't go away. There's an old Romanian proverb, when it's all said and done, advice comes too late. That's certainly the case for Eastern Europe, including Romania and Yugoslavia, once pawns in the great power struggle between communism and fascism. Even after the war, their populations were forced to endure decades of brutal repression because of decisions made by Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin. Millions died hoping for liberty. Today, nearly all the people of Eastern Europe enjoy increasing personal and economic freedom. For those like King Michael and the World War II veterans who lived through those trying times, theirs is a war story that deserves to be told. In Bucharest, Romania, I'm Oliver North for War Stories. Good night.